Rebecca's recording us. This will be available. If you missed something for some reason, you'll be able to access the recording to go back and listen to pick up things that you might have, again, missed the first time. So welcome, everybody. My name is Amy Patterson, and I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut Land Conservation Council. Thank you so much for being here. This is the first in our series of topical workshops after having gone through 8 regional and statewide roundtables to get input from all of you on what topics are of interest. We immediately pivoted to this online learning series after we had to postpone our annual conference. And from what we can tell, things are going really well. And we are so grateful for your participation and really your adaptation to this new method of learning and communicating. It's really been inspiring for us to see the level of participation that we are getting from you. Just quickly, a couple of updates. We've got 2 sessions coming up next week. On the 29th, we'll be meeting with the Accreditation Commission for a Q&A with them. And on the 30th, Judy will be back to talk about online events for those of us, many of us, who have had to cancel our or postpone our in-person events. And we'd like to do some brainstorming around that topic too with you. We have this scheduled for an hour, but what we're finding is that an hour tends to be very challenging in terms of getting it all done and giving you all a chance to participate. So we will extend an additional 15 minutes, but certainly, you know, as you're scheduling your day, don't feel the need to stay on. Again, this will be recorded. Quick Zoom guidelines, although I think everybody's become quite the experts in Zoom. You are all going to be muted throughout this entire session. We also will ask you, we can do that, but we're going to ask you to turn off your video so that you'll only be looking at the screen with Judy's presentation, and she might pop in and out herself, but we will all be, our videos will all be turned off. On the bottom navigation bar of your Zoom, there is a chat function. If you have a question during Judy's presentation, please post it in the chat function. And both Rebecca and I will be monitoring that. And then Judy will be prompting us for some question breaks. And then we'll be able to read your questions and hopefully she'll be able to answer them. And then finally, by way of follow-up, as we have been doing with all of our regional and other networking conversations through Zoom, Rebecca, wave Rebecca. There's Rebecca. She is the one who deserves all the credit for pulling these together so quickly after we canceled our conference or postponed our conference. So thank you, Rebecca, again. And Rebecca will be sending out a follow-up note with some survey questions very quickly, just to gain further input from you. Our goal with this online series has been to be as responsive as possible to address your needs during this unprecedented time. And finally, I will tell you that people have been asking me about the conference. Are we going to do it? Are we not? October 24th is the date that we have penciled in on the calendar. We will be doing something on October 24th. We will be having a gathering. It will almost 99% sure it'll be virtual, of course, but we are going to have a mini conference of sorts, and we're excited to bring everybody together and hopefully feel pretty good about where we're at that time. So with that, I'm going to turn my video off. I'm going to mute myself, and I'm going to turn this over to Judy Anderson, who will get us going. So thanks again, everybody, for being here.
Okay, well, thank you, Amy, and thank you, Rebecca, and thanks to all of you for signing on today to have a conversation about how we are recalibrating given the COVID-19 pandemic. What we've done today is try and create a webinar, a learning system for you that reflects something for everyone, because there's a lot of diversity as far as organizational capacity and perspectives on this call today. So it's going to be a little bit of a menu approach. Hopefully you'll get something, 1 or 2 things you can pull out of it. And then of course we will be supplying you with the slide deck, so you don't have to take a lot of notes, and the recording as well. And as Amy said, we're going to have periodic breaks for questions along the way. So the first thing we wanted to talk about was, how are you feeling? Are we working from home? And you'll hear a lot of this, where people are literally recalibrating that message. We aren't working from home. We're at home trying to work, right? So there's a paradigm shift that we are working in within here. And that our first job is to be able to adapt and respond and recalibrate, very different from where we might have been last fall or December. So the idea of having to be adaptive and retooling your life personally, and then also within that other system, your land trust system, your larger community system, is increasingly important. So I don't know if you can tap into the chat box, how you're doing. And Rebecca, I actually can't see the chat box. So you might have to read out for me what people are typing in.
Will do. I haven't seen, oops, we've got, okay, everything takes so much longer at home.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else typing in how they're doing?
So far what we've got.
I can't chat box.
All right, so the chat box is at the bottom toolbar. There's a little speech bubble. We've got an onslaught of responses here. Hard to concentrate. Adaptability is key. A chance to innovate. Some who work from home, so this is kind of more of the same.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
And hard to do projects that take longer than 30 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
Adapting. First board meeting via Zoom. That's great. Seemed to go well.
Good.
And yeah, so adaptation.
Okay, so this is good. So thanks for sharing how you're doing and how you're adapting on that. What I'm seeing nationally, and I'm taking a lot of webinars to try and learn with you, is that learning how to create that team experience remotely is a challenge, but it can be done. I have elder parents, one in Vermont, one in Massachusetts, and they're very lonely. So trying to figure that out with your volunteers and your normal team as well is going to be part of the learning within that. So hold on, let me see what's going on here. Somehow my screen is just frozen up. There we go. Now the question is, what are you doing differently, right? What has shifted for you or your land trust? Can you type that in a little bit? What are you doing differently now than you thought you would have been doing a month or so ago, or in January even? I know for many land trusts, we're going to talk about the events later, but the whole volunteer work, gearing up for spring work, all that is shifting dramatically. Planning your events now, right? Going virtual. It's a huge learning curve for a lot of us, right? Should have been doing your big tour. So event planning, financial adjustment, exactly. Thinking about how we're going to do more trail work and planning, that's good, right? Not waiting for November to fundraise. Right. Okay, so the good thing is that you are shifting because some of the land trusts that I'm talking to are sort of frozen in time, and we want to be able to support each other on how we're going to make that shift. So the elephant in the room here, or in this case in the forest, that we're talking about today is, can we fundraise now? Is now a time, given the crisis that we're all facing and the fact that millions of people have lost their jobs, can we fundraise? And the answer is, I think, uniformly across the board, yes. When I was first asked this question in February and early March, I said, I think we should wait a bit and let people get their legs underneath them because everybody was more or less in shock. But now we've had a considerable amount of time to recognize what's going on. And now the realization is people are able to begin to think about the things they love, and land and water and community landscapes are something that people are cherishing more than ever before. Land is becoming the sanity place for a lot of people when they're trapped at home. So that means we've got to have a plan B, or I say plan C, over the next 9 months. Many people are now talking about the fact that this is going to be going on until there's a vaccine. So we're going to have to make adjustments for the fact that it will take a while to get a vaccine. And how's that going to mean that our work and our relationships with people are going to be changing? That, frankly, will mean that your fundraising, your outreach programs and planning will need to be retooled a bit. It's going to have to be rethought of about connections and how you're able to reconnect and inspire over time. And the good thing is that many of the same principles are not going away, right? We know this stuff that you wanted to connect and connect personally. And Michael from Joshua's Trust was just telling us how they're calling all their donors. That is outstanding. So calling with an open heart and an open hands about how are you doing? Is there anything we can do with you? Do you have any concerns? What are you looking forward to? Having a conversation about that with your donors, your volunteers, your conservation landowners. Think about how you can re-engage those people in a way that shows that you care about them as people is really important. That means we got to be authentic. That's always true with fundraising, right? And be specific about the fact that you're caring about them, or you have this upcoming challenge that you're going to be looking for making a support or an ask. That's really important now. Why you? Why now, right? So what? Who cares? And you want to be able to link that to the context of this virus. Why now? There's a lot of causes out there. Why is that going to be important? Here's an opportunity for your land trust not to sound selfish. And for those of you who have known me personally in other trainings, you know I can get a little snarky. And part of that snark comes from being in this thing for 30 years and watching nonprofits be too self-focused. This is an opportunity for you to elevate others around you and to make sure that you are leading from behind. It's not about your land trust. You are the conduit of change, and you're helping make that happen. And so when you do that, when you're working with major donors, now's a perfect time to really re-engage with your major donors, your foundations, your monthly donors. Let people know that now is the time you need them more than ever, that you're really going to be there for them in the community, and the community is looking to you as your local land trust to protect the lands and waters that people cherish most. And that's where people have been getting in this isolation period, right? So that means, and this is taken from Julia Campbell, the idea that compassionate communication is important. It's always been important, but it's really important now. And so some of the questions that people had submitted was, we don't want to be tone deaf. We're concerned about alienating people. And I applaud you in that sensitivity. Absolutely right. But we can do it in a way that is compassionate. I'm going to show you some examples of that. And that we can also help people move forward in this because people are feeling somewhat overwhelmed. I thought we should put in this quote at the bottom. We need to stop interrupting what people are interested in and be what people are interested in. And that gets to those shared values and thinking about how do land and water aid in supporting people and where they are.
Judy, we did have a poll question queued up for this. Do you want me to go ahead and launch that now?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Okay, so we're testing out this polling concept here using Zoom. See if you can fill this out. We're calling donors, we're calling volunteers, we're calling conservation landowners, calling partners, calling people in our community. Haven't called people yet. Okay, so it's looking like some people are getting called. That's good. And it looks like 64% of you aren't calling people yet. So this is an opportunity for you to take your team, whether it's your board or if you have staff or if you have committees, and break up the lists and either email people and call them. You're not asking for money, you're checking in to see how people are doing and what they're looking forward to, if they have any concerns. You're using this to figure out what they care about. You know, how are they spending their time? How are they managing to stay sane in this crazy time that we're in? So this is an opportunity to engage in a way that we didn't really have before. Okay, thanks for that. So by the way, Christopher's saying we don't call them under normal circumstances, we email all the time. You could email people personally, but it's okay to call Christopher and even just leave a message and say, hey, we're reaching out to our volunteers or we're reaching out to our supporters just to check in, give you an update about what's going on at the Land Trust, seeing how you're doing. Okay. So now, I wanted to give you a heads up. So Free Will has been doing these very good webinars related to the COVID-19 issue. And one of the things they've been tracking from a data perspective is events. So we're not going to focus on events today, but this does impact your fundraising and it does impact your communications with that. And they're talking about how, given the fact that most of the nonprofit communities supporters tend to be 50 and up, the likelihood of having events, meaning gatherings, is diminished significantly over the next 9 to 18 months. They've now even lowered that estimate to 30% based on the fact that breaking news on the resurgence of the virus anticipated in the fall. So that will impact your fundraising and it will impact your communications. So I like to just bring this up in light of the communications and fundraising, because that's going to mean that we're going to have to come up with other ways to engage and other ways to keep people involved from a fundraising perspective. And I just wanted to remind you that this is where we're at, right? This is the classic fundraising cycle. So that idea of thanking and engaging and asking people what they care about and do they have concerns and this is what the Land Trust is going to do, that's more important than ever. So here's an opportunity to bring your board, your staff, other key volunteers into that process. And so when we think about, are you staying in touch? For those of you who have databases, this is a great way to be able to segment, right? Segment your email lists, your donor lists. How do we contact our monthly donors? And use technology to help as well. So it's not so onerous a task. We can send out an email to all of our volunteers that's specific to volunteers very simply if we have an email list of our volunteers. So that's something to consider. How can we leverage our technology? One of the ways that I think is really starting to come forward in the fundraising, this is all about fundraising, right? But remember, 85% of your fundraising is your communications and your engagement, is to elevate others than you, right? And so here's an example of a very small land trust, the Sheridan Community Land Trust, doing a remote volunteer cleanup. And you can see at the bottom, those people, they're showing how they're 6 feet apart. They're trying to get a lot of community engagement on trash pickup and people being part of that, and how they're sharing that thank you and those momentums and those stories in their social media within that, right? So getting people feeling like they can make a difference close to home in actions. There's also the opportunity for us to give back to the partners that we've asked for support. So I'm sure you're seeing this. This is something that's posted on social media, but lots of nonprofits have asked their local businesses to support their events and their programs. Now's a chance for your land trust to ask to go back the other way. And there's examples of land trusts saying, hey, you can support the such and such and they'll donate 10% to the land trust. And that's an okay way to do that. But we also could have different messaging, which is, hey, everybody, such and such business or our local business has been for us. They've been here for conservation for years and years. Now let's show them how much we care and do it back the other way. And that's a great thing to do with email, or it's a great thing to do on social media. So that gets the face. You'll hear more and more people talking about this in fundraising, but don't ask for money, ask for impact. What does that mean? It means don't say, will you give us $75? Say, will you help create this trail? Will you help make sure that we can get kids and families outside? Will you help make sure that we get the restoration that's needed on this property? And then you talk about what that means, and that to do that, would you consider a gift of $75, right? So lead with impact, less with money. That's been true all along, but it's really clear now. How are you going to make a difference? How are we going to change? So let's take a quick break for questions. Anything in there that we want to talk about yet?
Yeah, I just joined. Can you just repeat everything he's been saying for the last 20 minutes? Just kidding. It's Beth Harmon with the Darien Land Trust.
Great. So, Rebecca, are there any questions in the chat box that we should address?
Not seeing any come through just yet, but oh, here's one right now. With Giving Tuesday coming up, are there specific strategies?
Excellent, Erin. We're going to be touching on Giving Tuesday towards the end of this. And yes, absolutely, there's some strategies in that. Well, keep typing in your questions, and then Rebecca, we're going to have question breaks throughout this whole thing, and then Rebecca will be scanning that so we can make sure you get your questions answered. Again, because we've got people from all over the capacity range here, we wanted to provide some different examples. So now I'm going to drop into examples. So I'm going to focus a lot on email and electronic because it's really tough to do hard copy right now because people are working from home, right? But electronic is something that we can do much easier. So here's an example I've modified from Free Will where it's not a fundraising request. So don't send fundraising requests cold. You never do that anyhow, but it's really important now, right? Millions of people have lost their jobs. We don't know if they have loved ones that are sick or if they're sick themselves. So you've got to touch base with them. And so here's an example. I wanted to reach out and see how you're holding up in the midst of this crisis. You can use other language, but the concept is that you're touching in, you know, in these confusing, uncertain times, we're all grappling with it. And then here's a key thing. I'm personally feeling blah, blah, blah. So you're trying to acknowledge that you're a human and how you're feeling. That allows you to be able to be more relatable from your recipients. Remember, email is a person-to-person thing. Never send out, dear donor, dear friend, dear landowner, dear volunteer. Don't do that, right? And if you don't have their names, you want to just set it up in a way so it starts off to, I wanted to reach out. But ideally, with your email tracking systems, you should be able to have people's names, right? That shouldn't be hard. Okay, so here's another approach, and you'll have this language on the slides. Again, modified from Free Will. I really liked the idea that they're proposing, which is giving 3 different ways that people can help. So again, being compassionate and sensitive to where people are in this economic times, rather than just asking for a gift of money, that we're asking for different ways that people can support. I'm going to show you how they're suggesting that. But the other key thing, look how short and to sweet it is, and it's showing very specific examples of what people could do. So here, this is their land trust, and say, yes, some of us are working on easements. Well, you know, that's a jargon term, so I would avoid that. But notice how they're saying with infants on our laps, and we're going up and down stairs with their middle schoolers. Again, humanizing, I can relate to you at home. We're relatable as well. Here's another example. This is a soft ask here, and we can send you the full email. This is from Carol from Mississippi Valley out in the Midwest. She is doing a terrific job of connecting with us as far as what she's feeling and how she's connecting with you. And so she talks about what's going on with Earth Day, and then asks if they would do a $50 gift to celebrate the 50th year of Earth Day. So the idea of being empathetic and specific, simple, is part of that. Here's another example, again, modified for Free Will on an ask. So touching base, despite the uncertainty, we're continuing to conserve the lands and waters that you love, even in the face, the challenge of whatever it is. Our team, our volunteers, you know, our staff are working to address this more than ever. And then if I've learned anything during this time, is that we need nature, trails, and places to tap into for our local food. This is my language, more than ever. The land and water is providing us peace of mind. So you'd want to think about, what is it now that people are relating to? And if you're not working in agriculture, maybe you don't talk about local food. Likewise, if you're not working in wildlife habitat, maybe you're not going to talk about that as much. But help ground it into how are people feeling now and the definite benefits of that. So here is that 3 example that Freewell's talking about. So they're suggesting you consider this, and I think this is a really good idea, again, because we don't know how people are doing. A gift of cash, and talking about what difference that will make. If we put to immediate use to do help with the trails or help with the wildlife habitat, be as specific as you can. The Amazon Smile, meaning that lots of people are doing ordering in line, whether it be toilet paper or hand sanitizer or books to read. The idea there is another way. And then the idea of how can you tap into their estate planning. So evidently their research is showing that people are looking for wills and plan giving more than ever in the history of Google search. And they say you can send them to their website and they have free will that they don't charge for. That's another thing. So the idea, if you have a website, is it easy to find language that they can include in their will? How are you supporting that desire to then think about plan giving as one way of doing that? Okay, so any more questions yet? Rebecca, anything in the...
We don't have anything regarding this in the chat, but I can go ahead and launch that second poll here.
Okay, let's do that.
Test the temperature here.
While you're doing that, this is Amy, there are a couple of questions that actually did come in. Rebecca, you might not have seen them here. I think one was about, gosh, I just scrolled up to Giving Tuesday, how to engage directors that are not amenable for calling. That was one
okay.
that came in. Yeah, I think that was it.
So if you have board members who are uncomfortable calling, the first question might be why, right? So a lot of time people are uncomfortable when they don't feel in control or they feel awkward about that or they don't want to be intrusive. So you can prepare a script, or if that's helpful, I can prepare a couple examples of scripts and we can send it out for you for your directors or your staff or volunteers. The idea is a conversation. And frankly, a lot of people aren't even going to pick up because they're going to be screening their calls, right? You can do personal emails. And so you can cut and paste very simply into emails and do that same kind of engagement there. You could write notes. If you have people's addresses, that shouldn't be a problem either. So there's lots of other ways to engage, but I understand that calling can feel awkward and you're not asking for money, right? This is not a telephone ask. Any other questions? Okay, and so this poll is asking, can you see yourself using any of that example language I just shared? It looks like the majority of you are thinking like you might be able to pull something from that. So that's good. That's the hope. Remember that if you're doing online asks, you want to do it more than once. And the idea here is that people get a lot of emails, though they are paying more attention to it. They need to be compelling, but you also want to follow up. And that's where, if you have a database, it can really work for you well, because you can separate those who have given, don't send them another ask, and those who have not yet, right? So that should be easy for you to do. Okay. So here's an email for some updates. So one of the things that I'm seeing in the research out there is more frequent emails than we might have done in the past that are sharing hope and good news. So what does that mean? Well, if you were sending out an email once a month, maybe you're going to be sending it out 2 or 3 times a month, but they are short. They aren't a story stack. You don't have a lot of it. It's a personal update. Maybe it includes an image. And the idea here is that you're feeding good news and updates about how you're doing as a person or how your organization is doing and the change that you're making happen. So here's a very simple example of that. Here's another one, mostly for monthly donors in this case. Remember that monthly donors may be the ones that stand with you over time. That certainly has happened in past economic crises where small amounts of money, those that had the broadest base of support did the best because of the economic hit to major donors. There's no precedent for where we are right now, but there is a growing recognition that monthly donors may be where it's at. And so promoting that all gifts of any size matter and making sure that people can have a low entry point and then celebrating that is very strategic. In the social media, this gets to building momentum, making people feel part of your team, and you can fundraise through social media, right? The idea of looking for relevance, whether it be branded days, people coming together, some humor, showing the difference and the impact. There's going to be a lot more of that happening, and I'm already seeing Land Trust really respond to this. In this case, the National Park Service, they took Veterans Day and they showed that they had people in their staff who were veterans now giving back to Parks and Water as part of that. You may have that in your community where you have veterans who are volunteers or either staff or on your board. You could do things like that. Look for the branded days to highlight it. Beauty, Land Trust doing a great job on that. Keep it up. Keep reposting photos of beautiful things. Again, I follow Joshua's Trust, and they're doing a really terrific job of mixing up on-site ground videos, beautiful photographs, connecting with animals and what people love, looking at easy on-the-ground videos of peepers or streams. That's what we're trying to do here, right? We're trying to mix it up so that it's an interesting way for people to engage. And you'll see more and more opportunities for people looking for ways for people to engage as well. I'm not seeing a lot of humor out there in the Land Trust world yet. I keep trying to get us to be more funny. And people in the Land Trust world, like lots of us are trained in science, and that does not feel comfortable to us. But in times like this, people are looking for appropriate humor. And so the National Park Service has done a great job with that. That's that online meeting with the birds with video. You look like a nice heron. Without video, hair's all standing up, right? People can relate to that because a lot of people are staying in their pajamas all day long. To the left, those are the Pickle Sisters, or that's what it been. I don't know if that was an accurate thing or not. I thought it was hysterical. If your Land Trust is working in agriculture, you could completely link something like that to, we're starting to plant here. We're all thinking about fabulous things in the future, and we thought you'd love to see a clip of the Pickle Sisters, right? A little bit of humor. And then that gets into the video. So the idea here is that live video doesn't have to be polished. You do want good sound, but video is a great way of being able to draw people into that. Save the Redwood League did this really nice video, which I'll share with you. And the idea is when you do video, you want to think about why. What is the point? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to get people to feel, do, or remember? And from a fundraising perspective, right, the idea is to draw people in so that they feel engaged and compassionate for the work that needs to be done. So here, I won't play it today, but we'll send out the link. They did this terrific moment of calm. This is a series they're doing where it's 1 minute and it's using screen captures, just regular photographs, and some video clips to basically almost like a meditative state. Very simple, beautifully done. It might be something for your Land Trust to consider. All right, any questions? Who's doing video?
So Judy, we actually have a couple questions that have rolled in the chat from kind of going back towards talking about estate planning. A couple folks were wondering if there's a risk of doing the outreach around that and being basically the question asks, it seems like we're capitalizing on people's pervasive fears. So is that outreach planning, outreach around estate planning, could that backfire?
Yeah, I applaud that sensitivity. You don't want to seem like you're an ambulance chaser. That's not a good thing. No, the language that you would want to use is that people are asking if there's a way that they can support conservation in their wills, and so if that's something that you're interested in, here's the language, or here's where you can find it on your website, right? So put it in the context of people are asking. Now, have people asked you? Maybe not, but people are definitely asking across the country. So you don't want to be an ambulance chaser. Agreed. And that's where giving those other options, what we're trying to do is provide options that don't necessarily cost people a lot of money right now. Now with your major donors, people that, or could be major donors, that's a little bit different because you're working with them one-on-one. So you'll be able to know what's of importance to them. All right, so somebody's saying we're beginning to do videos. Christina is saying that, that's great. Short one of a stream, family walk, great. And then Christopher's talking about balance between frequent communications, we're checking in versus message fatigue. Okay.
There's another question about how many emails are too many. So maybe Judy, could you touch on that kind of message fatigue and how many emails are too many? Yeah,
so that's a really good question. And we've had that question for a long time, right? And the answer is the same. So bad content is too many. Boring content is too many. Selfish content is too many. So now if you think about being empathetic and compassionate, the idea is how can you do short touch points with people that portray good news as well as some of the challenges that you're facing. When I say you're facing, ideally you're getting it to the work and the impact that people care about. So Free Will is talking about people sending out emails every week for the next several weeks, months, because people want to know how you're doing and they're looking forward for that. Some land trusts are doing Good News Fridays. That's been the case for a while, but they're ramping it up, where they send out a photograph via email, and then they can cross-purpose this in social media with just a little note of, hey, have you checked out the such and such preserve? The peepers are singing, or the marshmallows are blooming, or something like that. Again, helping people re-engage that way. Do you have any questions? We're working with landowners if you have any questions on that. So that regular engagement, that's not talking about your organization so much, but impact is helpful. Okay, so what the heck is this Free Will thing? Free Will, the link is, we can send that out. It's an organization that works with nonprofits and individuals on plan giving and wills. So it is free, and they've clarified that. And so they've done this whole series of webinars free because of COVID-19 that I would recommend. And if you go to their website, go all the way down to the footer, and you will see a resource that says for nonprofits. And then they have said that you can put people towards their website for free wills, literally. They're not charging people for that. Yep. They do a lot of plan giving work. All right, any other questions?
So there was a concern with having volunteers out and about or showing that that's an opportunity because of the idea of practicing social distancing or staying at home. So the optics around that, Judy?
Okay, so depending on the state, right, and the state health and safety expectations, what I'm seeing both in land trust world and the non-land trust world is a recognition of, let's do this in a way that's safe and respectful and healthy. So if you're a family unit, going out and volunteering as your family unit is certainly fine, right? Because you are the same amoeba. If you're doing it staying 6 to 10 feet apart, that's good too. If you're doing it individually, like there's a lot of land trusts now empowering people that, hey, when you go on your walk, bring a plastic bag, use a plastic mitt to pick stuff up, put it in the plastic bag. You can make a difference with trash. And there's groups that are empowering their volunteers to do trail work. Here's the caveat. We want to be careful not encouraging people to do things that would put them at risk for being hospitalized, right? Because we're trying to take the pressure off the medical system. So do be aware of that. Like I personally would not suggest that people go out with their chainsaws to do critical chainsaw work, because if something happened, they'd have to go to the hospital. So that's just a suggestion on a personal level. I know how other people feel about that. What do you
Judy, if
think?
I can add one more sort of follow-up question to that from earlier on, there's with the shift of group and land trust-led events to doing these events and encouraging people to get out on their own, how can land trusts lead in these circumstances?
So how can we lead, shorten that question a little bit, how can we lead to get people out?
How can we lead from shifting from encouraging people to gather with our organizations to doing it on their own? How can land trusts still be the leaders in it?
Yeah, that's great. And that is something we're going to be focusing on this event webinar coming up next week. So we're trying to gather examples of that. And if you have examples, please share them with us. The idea here is that you can lead through social media, right? You could start a campaign about, make a difference today, and you can hashtag it and get people going so that they're up picking stuff up. You can get people thinking about how they can make a difference. But the key thing, because of this sense of community, is this desire to share with others and the desire to be part of something bigger than yourselves. And so I would recommend you think about, in your email or in your social media, how can you make this feel like we're part of a community in whatever it is? Somebody has posted, or Amy's posted, walk with purpose as a possible hashtag within that. So we're going to focus more on that in the next webinar too. So send over any thoughts or examples you have. Okay, keep typing in your questions. I'll keep going because we want to get to Giving Tuesday now. So there's been some really good webinars going on about Giving Tuesday now. I'm sure you're aware of the website itself. The website itself has a lot of ideas here. It's not too late to get involved with Giving Tuesday now. Remember, this is a response to the COVID crisis, moving Giving Tuesday now. Remember, it's usually after Black Monday, right? And Black Friday, I guess, right? But now we're doing something in a couple of weeks, May 5th. And the idea is it doesn't replace the other one, but it's an opportunity to be engaged. Now, not everybody is comfortable with these giving days. And the idea here is that there's lots of ways you could participate. And so for some land trusts, using it as a way of thanking people and building momentum of appreciation is a great way to participate in Giving Tuesday now. You don't have to do an ask. You could do an ask, but you don't have to. You could do a way of featuring your volunteers. You could bring in a soft act with that. You could have a challenge grant for that day for something very specific. The idea is that here's an opportunity for you to engage in something that's global in a way that shows kindness and compassion. And that's really what people are craving right now. With that, I'll show you some ideas here. So this is from Giving Tuesday Now, share good news stories. Well, that's a theme we've been talking about today. In fundraising, always been the case, but it's really important now. People are looking for hope and they're looking for difference. And they're thinking about, with this virus and this isolation and the uncertainty, how are good things happening in my community? How am I part of that? Thanking our supporters, right? So you have time to organize a thank-you-thon, right? You have time to begin to think about how can we elevate and thank our conservation landowners and thank our volunteers and thank local businesses who have supported you in the past. Remember, when we think about fundraising from local businesses, it's got to be a partnership. And this is an opportunity for you to say, hey, this is a business that has cared about conservation. Let's give a shout out to them if you can, if you're in a position to go by and, you know, pick up the takeout or whatever it is. Now's a great time to do that. So another suggestion is this 24 hours of gratitude, right? You could post things and you can schedule it so that things that your organization is grateful for, great idea. You can plan this in advance, doesn't have to be complicated. I love this idea, amplify others. This is part of my value. I love to elevate humble people and humble organizations. You can too. It doesn't have to be all about you, right? You can talk about partnerships. The Kestrel Land Trust just did this. They're in Massachusetts, and they did a joint fundraiser for their Giving Day. That was yesterday, where they said, would you consider a gift to us and a gift to the food bank, right? And as a result, they simultaneously raised money for that land trust and the food bank because people are in need of that food bank. That was a great way of merging two important causes together in a way that showed they are not selfish and they're part of the community. And the end result has been very, very strong. And then, you know, I don't know what your capacity is. Some of you on this call may have the capacity to go live on that day, to have conversations, to have a call with your land protection person or your volunteer, where they're out there in the field having a conversation. You can advertise that in advance so that people can participate. And then their last thing, and they have lots more ideas, is thinking about what people can do from the couch. So you could do something that is totally unselfish and post something about sewing masks, right? How would you link that back to your work? Well, we've got to have masks when we go outside now, if we're anywhere in proximity of people, or people in our community need masks, or they could use fabric that had, like my best friend from childhood made me a mask that has owls on it. She knows I love owls. So you can think creatively, you've got the time, about how your land trust can help elevate others and give back. So for more information, you're going to want to go to the Giving Tuesday website. They got a ton. They've got a lot of the branded icons that you can use in social media. This is an example from normal Giving Tuesday, right? That I thought you might like, that shows the before and after of what we're trying to do and how you can give to make a difference, right? So showing a trail that was before the improvements and then after the improvements, and saying, will you help us do this for another trail or water restoration or wildlife habitat? That people love that before and after of, you know, would your gift of $25 help us with that? That kind of thing. All right. Anything resonating on the Giving Tuesday now?
Judy,
There are
we've got,
Yeah, go ahead, Rebecca.
we've got a couple questions in the chat regarding some of the local giving opportunities that are coinciding with this new Giving Tuesday. So
Yeah.
Hank asks about they're participating in the Great Give, which is on May 5th and 6th. And now they're looking at doing Giving Tuesday now, but should they do it now or in November or both?
What I'm seeing happening, and there is more on that Giving Tuesday site, is that you merge them together, right? So if you're like Idaho Gives, there's a lot of state giving days happening in the spring. You can use Giving Tuesday now as a warm up to that, or you can merge it, which is what Kestrel just did, which is basically their Giving Tuesday now was yesterday, where they're doing that. And then maybe if the statewide or local giving days before Giving Tuesday, then use the Giving Tuesday now as an appreciation thing, right? If your state giving or local giving day is after, maybe with your community foundations, whatever it is, maybe you use Giving Tuesday now as the warm up to that, saying, hey, thank you so much. Look at all these great things that are happening. You post that. Don't forget our local giving day. And if people give to both days, it's great. Does that help? Okay, so I think the idea on the Giving Tuesday days is, one, let's do some take home. Let's not get stressed out about it. You don't have to do it. It's an opportunity to give thanks, and you can very easily go to the website and get some of the templates to do some branding around that. And you could start with saying, you know, can we be thankful? Can we elevate other people? Can we show before and afters? You could do that. You can set up a Giving Tuesday now way to ask, and that's fine too. Just make sure that the way that you give is easy to do. So that's a really big thing. Test it. Make sure that you can take online donations easily. Make sure your website, hopefully you have a website, that giving through that platform as well is helpful. So one of the frustrations that happens out there is that people want to give, they try to give, and it's not possible for them to do it easily. So that's just a heads up there. Test that. Okay. Here are some of the resources that Giving Tuesday now has, and these are really transferable into other online giving concepts. So I think it's worth going there and explaining to your team, whether you're all volunteer or not, that there are things that you could pull into your outreach. Again, we are anticipating that a lot of this online communications and engagement is going to stick. People are getting more comfortable with this. We anticipate this extending over at least another 9 months, probably longer until there's a vaccine. So taking this time to begin to think through how we can get better at it is an excellent way of using your resources. And then here's another thing. Everybody's learning together, so you don't have to be perfect. People are going to give you the benefit of the doubt as we all muddle through this together. All right, I wanted to close with this really critical concept. Your thank yous are more important than ever. Having robotic thank yous is a disaster. Not sending out timely thank yous is a disaster. So you're working from home, and we all get that, and maybe you don't have a printer at home. You're going to have to figure out, how does the thank you process continue? This is an auto thank you. So I'm a monthly supporter of the Conixu Land Trust, and so every month my credit card is charged automatically, right? And every month there's an auto response that comes back, and Conixu, a very small land trust, does a great job of personalizing that auto response, updating it every month, so it's always fresh. It's always something else. And that helps me feel like they recognize that I'm not just doing this for kicks and giggles. I want to see different responses. I want to see different impact. So don't forget your auto responses when people give online. You want to follow up with an actual paper thank you letter. That would be important, but we recognize those are challenged, but be transparent about that in your paper thank you letter. I wish we could have gotten this out a little sooner. It's been a little tricky now that we're working from home, but I want to again thank you so much for your contribution of blah, blah, blah. That's going to help me do X, Y, Z, right? So important to have it tailored to the impact of the change people are making it happen. Any questions on that? How are you doing on your thank you letters?
Judy, we do have a question about online donation software, which is the best. Any recommendations from you on that?
Yeah, so I see Aaron's using Little Green Light, and they love it. A lot of land trusts like Little Green Light, and so you could reach out to land trusts and talk to them about what they love about it. What I would say is, when you're selecting one, and you can go to something called N10, which is N10, literally, and they do a periodic review of online giving platforms and databases. Is that you want something that's got good support, right? So that would be the key thing. But you can do it through a variety of platforms. They will charge you for processing fees, and that's okay, right? Please understand that's okay. It's like why people use credit cards out there in businesses. There's a whole system behind making sure that the giving is done in a safe, as hack-free way as possible. That you'll want to be tapping into. Okay, so Deborah's saying they always send personal thank you cards. Deborah, that's great. That's great. Hopefully it's done in a timely way. If you listen to a lot of the fundraising consultants out there, they will tell you that it has to be done in 24 hours. I think for most of us, that's really difficult, particularly when we're all working from home. But gosh, I'm hoping that you can get something out within a week. That would be really good. Let's see, other people are talking about Donor Perfect and then partnering with Constant Contact. That's good. Donor Perfect is a very solid database. It tends to be a little bit more expensive than some. So you'll just want to do some recognition of pricing out as well. People are using MailChimp, Constant Contact. Classy is another one that I'm hearing more and more people use for emails that are also linked into database. Any other thoughts on that? Okay, I'm going to keep going and then we can make sure we haven't missed anybody through this. So this was just sent to me based on a giving day and I really liked it. Notice how simple it is. Notice that they branded it to the giving day and that it's a little bit fun, right? So remember, land trust, oof, we're awfully serious. So the idea here is thank you for giving local, again, emphasizing the local. It's very conversational, it's friendly, it's timely, right? It was sent out and it was personal, right? We needed to say, hi, Judy. Email is a personal connection from me to you. So it's a great example, short, cute, loved it. So given this, and that we've got land trusts all over the board here, how might you recalibrate? What's one thing that you could pull from today's discussion in the chat or in the slides in our conversation that your land trust could do to take action, step it up a notch, further engage, improve your fundraising? Can you type that in? What's one or two things you could do as a land trust? You know, could you, monthly giving option, great. Calling and checking in, terrific. Checking in email, yep, excellent. A lot of Facebook follows, good. Thanking our partners, I love it. Highlighting the sponsors. Capture new visitors that are preserves. Okay, that's a question, Mike, so let's get to that. Love to do monthly giving, okay. So let's do that because monthly giving is super important these days. Remind people of Amazon giving option, excellent. 60-cent personal video, thank you. That's great. So I'm actually checking out something called Thank View. I'm doing a demo with them next week, Thank View, and it's an app that allows you to send personalized videos to people. And I don't know anything about it, but I think it's worth exploring, particularly for groups that have maybe a little bit more capacity, where you're doing customized thank videos or update videos that you could send one-on-one to people. So just a heads up on that. Excellent. Well, this is great, you guys. You're pulling out some ideas. You're thinking about how you can keep yourself fresh, how you can show you're there for people, how we can make sure that with the virus, which is going to continue in the sense of isolation, people don't know how they can help, don't know what they can do, that they can step forward and do that. You've talked about how you want to be sensitive and not be an ambulance chaser or not be callous or tone deaf, and that's important. So step back and think about, from fundraising, the most important thing you can do is help people understand that there are challenges out there and they can help, and this is how. Recognize that millions of people have lost their jobs. We don't know how people are going to be on the other end. And so you want to be sensitive with language like, if you're in a position to give right now, if this is something that feels right for you right now, we would love it if blank, right? So frame it in the way that if it feels right, if you're in a position, if you could do this, it would be great. It's a gentle way of saying, could you participate? Any other questions we've missed?
Judy, there's one, I'm going to just go ahead and read it from Elizabeth. We're sensitive to the fact that we're in a good financial position relative to other nonprofits. We know we're fortunate. How do we respond when donors ask how we're doing financially? Will our relatively good financial position discourage donors from giving to us? And how do we message around this?
That's a really good question. So I think that you want to be authentic, right? I think you can say something like, we are fortunate at this point in time to be in a good position, in part because of your generosity in the past. And we can't thank you enough for that. We recognize that there may be other nonprofits at this time that really need your help, but we're going to need you this summer and fall as never before. We have projects coming up that we're going to have to jump on. If you'd like to help us get ready for that now, that would be terrific. If you want to wait and help us this summer and fall, we'll need you then. So something that has that recognition that you're instinctively looking for, that sounds like who you are, and I applaud that. But don't just say we're good, because if you keep saying that, you won't be good. And I'm sure there are more projects and more difference you can do. You can also think about doing something like with Kestrel, which is say, do a joint giving platform if you're working with agriculture and the food bank, or if you're working with a nature center in your area and you're doing trails and habitat. You could do a joint fundraising thing that could be very effective. And it would show that you're a land trust that is not transactional, that you actually are part of that community and have a bigger heart. Anything else? And if not, Amy and Rebecca will wrap it up, but we're happy to stay on longer if there's other people who have questions. Again, we want to make sure that you get your questions answered.
We did have one come through, Judy. Should we point out the changes to charitable giving that came into effect with the recent legislation? In that everyone can give $300 to charity, even if they don't itemize, and high dollar donors can deduct up to 100% of their income. Yeah.
So that's interesting that you bring that up. That there's a lot of chit chat about that in the webinars I'm taking. The overall consensus that I'm seeing is that people are saying that's not going to make or break people, frankly. You can mention it, and you should probably mention that on your giving page and your website. That would be a very logical thing to do. You could weave it into a PS if that is sensitive, but recognize that that's not going to be a driver for most people. Certainly if you're working one-on-one with major donors, depending on who you consider a major donor, some land trusts consider $500 to be a major donor. The distribution of that tax benefit is pretty low. So I wouldn't consider that to be a driver. I think you could add to it, and I would put it on your giving page. Thank you, Joe and Kate and Deb. Appreciate that, Marie. So we're here for you. CLCC is amazingly responsive. I brag about the Connecticut leadership across the country. There's not a lot of small staff service centers that are this responsible, this professional, and really care like this. It's quite extraordinary. I'm here for you as well. You guys know that. I do this for the change. And so if there's things we can do to help you in this transition, we're both there for you. So Amy and Rebecca, why don't you wrap it up, and we'll figure out what we can do next.
Judy, thank you so much. And thanks to everybody for joining us today. I know this was helpful. It certainly was helpful to us at CLCC. And I just want to give a shout out to all of our conference sponsors, including so many of you out there, as well as those who registered and allowed us to retain your registration fee. It has helped underwrite all of this programming, staff time, as well as any fees that we've had to pay significantly. And so we really couldn't do this without you. As we have been, please continue to send us your thoughts, your comments, your concerns, and we will continue to be as responsive as possible with our programming. So stay safe, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you Wednesday at the accreditation Q&A or Judy's next session on Thursday. So we'll see you then, and thanks for coming.
Judy, I saw one more question pop up. I think Gwen maybe he is still on here. She said that one director suggested waiving dues for last year's members, but asking for donations if people can give. What do you think?
Okay, great. Yeah, we're happy to stay on if people want to stay on. So that's a really good question. I think one of the things to think about is how you're determining membership. I really believe that any gift of any size counts as a member, right? It's the community engagement. We're here from you. And this might be a great time to pivot, to use that overused term, to that concept of everybody counts, any level counts. It's the change we're making. So I would say, yeah, I would say this is a great way to say a gift at any level will make a difference. You matter to us. Please join. Please continue to join. We really care about you being part of our team. How does that feel to people? Does that make sense? I think another way to think about this is when you're thinking about your strategy for engagement. Remember, people are giving less to become a member. They're giving for the change. They're staying to become part of that community if they feel appreciated. So make sure that part of your retention plan is this sense of making a difference and feeling appreciated. So donor retention is a major issue out there. And that's usually because people don't feel valued. You're welcome, Gwen. Any other questions out there, Rebecca?
Not that I see. I'm just scanning back here. Christopher agrees that that's a great tactic to say all donors are members.
Okay.
There's, and then what other long-standing pivots do you wish folks might use this opportunity to make?
Oh, what a brilliant question, Christopher. So here's the one thing that I am hoping Land Trust will do, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about this in the next webinar, but I'm seeing a lot of Land Trusts sort of throwing darts at the wall as far as their transition into the remote virtual field. And, you know, that's understandable, right? We're all trying to figure out the place. But I'm hoping that we're going to begin to think a little bit more strategically and say, you know what? We're going to learn how to do these videos in a way that's engaging and fun and have a little strategy about this. What do we want people to feel, do, or remember? How can we use it as a way to get more people to become involved, more ways to inspire other people? I'm watching a lot of land trusts instinctively move towards that education thing about, you know, what's this plant, what's that plant, things you can do for kids, that sort of thing. And they're, frankly, I think, recreating the wheel a lot, where they could be reposting some stuff from other people and really investing in what makes this special or elevating more people. So I think that would be a strategic move. How do we use this opportunity to build some skills that we're going to be using at least for the next 2 years? More remote work, more video, better email communication. How do we use this time to recognize that we should have been engaging and inspiring people more regularly? And so let's build those systems so that we can do that over time. What do you think about that, Christopher?
Hi, Judy. It's Christopher. So yeah, sounds great. So I appreciate it, and I'll see you on another webinar coming up soon. So.
Okay, perfect. Well, we'll look forward to listening to what you're doing.
Thanks.
Okay, well, with that, let's get you on your day, and we look forward to hearing you next week.
Thanks again, everybody. Yep, that sounds great. And thanks again, everybody, for the last seven people standing for hanging in there with us here. And we'll see you next week. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, sure.
Hi, Amy, it's Beth.
Hi, Beth.
Since I joined a little late, somehow the RSVP I didn't get a response, or anyway, I'm got on after 20 minutes, so I'm good. But is this your presentation downloadable?
Yeah, we're recording it. Actually, you're being recorded as we speak right now.
Oh,
So it's all being recorded and you will have access to it so you can view the part that you missed or repeat anything you want to hear again.
and what about the actual, if you just wanted to
You mean Judy's presentation?
print it out? To good
Yeah, yes,
old-fashioned-
absolutely.
Yes.
It'll be available. And Rebecca's going to be following up with all those who registered today with not only links to information, but also a couple of follow-up questions. So
Great.
you'll have access to it, Beth, no problem.
Thank you so much.
That's great. Thanks
Thanks for
again.
coming on. We'll see you next week, I hope, Beth.
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
Bye.
All right, bye, Judy. Thank you. We will debrief. I'm going to stop.